What is crack-a-lackin', my people? Welcome to day 28, where today we're going to be actually handling objections. So, yesterday we discussed kind of why objections happen, the mindset that you need going into objection handling, and yeah, how to kind of approach them in the best way possible. So, today I'm actually going to give you a few examples of some objections you could get, some scenarios that we're going to walk through together, and yeah, how to handle them. So get your pen and paper out and let's get cracking. So to kind of recap, why do objections happen? Remember, you're not getting rejected. It's just uncertainty. That's the only reason why they're happening. They're coming from fear, from past failure potentially, or just a lack of clarity. Prospects are using objections to protect themselves. They're not pushing you away. They're not pushing the offer away. They're just protecting themselves. And great closers lean into objections, not away from them. Okay, so these are the main things that we spoke about yesterday. So how do we handle objections? Well, there's a simple framework, a 6-step framework that I like to use, right? Firstly, you isolate the real objections, because most of the time, the first objection they give you is going to be a smokescreen. I need to think about it. I need to speak with someone before doing this, etc. That is purely smokescreen, and we need to identify, is it a smokescreen or is it real? Then we isolate from there and we find the real objection. The next thing we do is we get them into results-based thinking. So we get them back to thinking in the right mindset. Like, remember why you want to do this, right? Because initially when you drop that price, the initial kind of reaction you're going to get from people, it's kind of like fight or flight, right? Their body goes into fight or flight and their brain is producing all these like hormones and etc., chemicals in their brain. So what we need to do is we need to get them back into results-based thinking and calm them right down. And this is why it's super important that during objection handling, we remain calm, confident, and smooth, right? Then we basically need to identify from there whether it is kind of emotional or logistical, right? Or logical, right? Because objections kind of they follow this like pattern, right? You have, I need to think about it, and then the partner objection. And that typically goes to then money being the kind of concern. And then money then turns into either fear or logistics. So think about it as like this cross, right? Where the top two are partner. Think about it, middle is money, and then here you have fear and logistics. Then we need to reframe their way of thinking. We need to reframe their belief, because again, they're in this fight or flight mode. We need to calm them right down, and we need to get them thinking and reminding them why they want to do this and why it's so important that they do this today. Then we offer them a solution. We show them the way forward. We lead, right? We're the leader. And then we anchor their identity, right? You need to make decisions like the person you want to be to become them. There's this great analogy in sales that you can use, but it's also a great analogy to live by. And it's understanding, okay, an overweight person is only overweight because they make decisions like an overweight person, right? Their decision-making process is fundamentally flawed around nutrition, health, fitness, everything, right? Until they start making decisions like a fit and healthy person, they won't become fit and healthy. It's only when they start eating right, when they go to the gym, when they start being around people who are also like fit and healthy, that they become fit and healthy, right? It's when they start making decisions like the fit and healthy person. And it's the same with everything in life. Whether you want to be fit and healthy, whether you want to be an entrepreneur, whether you want to be a millionaire, whatever it may be, philanthropist, let's say, you want to give back to people and that's what you want to give your life to, right? So start thinking, we've discussed this, it's the importance of identity, right? Identity is so key, and you need to be like the leader for these people and show them that, like, look, you need to start becoming the person who is where you want to be. And that starts with decisions and beliefs. And that's why we challenge their beliefs. We reframe the way they look at their decisions and their beliefs. So, handling objections. So, quite simply, we're going to go, like I said, in the cross. I need to think about it first, okay? So, the I need to think about it objection, it happens really simply when there's kind of internal conflict, there's fear or there's uncertainty. So, step one, we isolate. So, before you do go and think about it, Mr. Prospect, John, as we've been calling him, right? Do you feel like this could help you hit XYZ goal? Clarify. What exactly are you going to, what exactly out of what we offer, like, do you feel like would benefit you most, right? Why do you believe that this is going to help you, right? Getting them into that results-based thinking is what we're doing there, okay? So we isolate the objection, we put it there, okay, before you go and think about it. Do you believe this works? We tie down the value, because the value is key. If they don't see the value in what we do after we drop the price, there's something wrong. And it isn't, again, like an objection, it's a concern. It's something that we need to clarify clearly. So we tie down the value, we get them into that results-based thinking. And then once we've done that, we've lowered down their guard. We've lowered their guard and they're much more open with us. So then we clarify and we're like, okay, so like what exactly are you going to go think about? And then they say, oh, well, it's a lot of money, or it's this, right? And that's how you kind of handle the I need to think about it objection and find out if it's a smokescreen. Now, if it isn't a smokescreen, and they're like, well, this is just how I make decisions, right? So what we do there is we challenge them, right? We help them with the identity reframe, right? So like I said, we ask them like, look, like, are you happy with where you are right now? No. Are you 100% happy with where you are right now? Obviously not, because they're on the call with you. Okay. And would it be fair to say that what's brought you to where you are right now is just your decisions and your beliefs around the world that you have made up until this point today? Yes. Okay. So would it make sense to continue making decisions that way when it's brought you to a place where you aren't 100% where you want to be? No. Why not? Because if I keep making decisions that way, then I'm not going to get to my goal. I'm happy you think that, Mr. Prospect. So where do you want to go from here? Right? That is a great way to handle the I need to think about it objection. You challenge their identity, right? Then naturally it can kind of go into another objection, like whether it's money fear, money logistics, whatever. But we'll talk about that later. Then handling the partner objection, right? Simply put, again, we isolate the objection. So hypothetical, if your partner was here and they were all on board, like, would you want to do this? Would you want to go ahead with this? Okay, why? Why do you want to do this? Okay. So with the partner objection, it can be a smokescreen again, because they can like be kind of putting that responsibility on like someone else and they don't want to take the full responsibility. So when they say they need to talk to their wife, that is a possibility. The way that you can pre-handle this is you say earlier in the call, like, okay, so when it comes to kind of investing into yourself or your business, like, are you the decision maker behind it? This allows us to get a clear understanding before the objection comes up. Because if they then say that, you can kind of be like, well, that's BS. Like, you told me earlier that you are the decision maker here. Like, even if you have a shared bank account, you said that you are the key decision maker, whether you invest or not. So there you go, right? That's how you can handle it before it even happens, right? But let's say they actually need to speak to their partner. Then what we do in that instance is we coach them on how to have that conversation, because naturally the way that they're going to have this conversation with their partner is, I can tell you firsthand, like myself, the way that like I've done conversations, because a partner objection can also be like speaking with parents. When I first invested into myself, I spoke with my parents before, right? It didn't go well at all. I still went through with it because I wanted to do it, but they said no. And the reason they said no is because the way I went about it, quite simply, was I was like, well, hey, I spoke with this guy. Basically, he said I could make like 10K a month. And I was like, okay, well, obviously that sounds fucking, excuse my language, but that sounds like bad, right? A parent is obviously going to see that as a huge red flag, and they're obviously going to say no. The same way, if you were to have that conversation with your wife, if you framed it in that way, it's obviously gonna not go how you want it to go. So if they want to do it and they just need to speak to their wife or partner because you share a bank account or whatever, it's quite simply just about giving them the coaching they need to have that conversation right, and then scheduling a follow-up call where you can bring the wife or husband or whatever on board to that call, right? So what we do there is we typically can coach them. And the way that you coach people to have the partner conversation is you tell them, okay, we need to have this conversation and talk about the impacts, the problems that you've been having and the impacts of those problems, as well as the solutions that you want and the impacts of those solutions, right? Because you need to make the conversation emotional, right? If you just, okay, hypothetical here. We'll talk about two different instances. In one instance, you go to the partner and you say, yeah, I met this guy, he said I can make 10K a month, or he said I can lose this amount of weight in this time and it's going to be 10 grand or 5 grand, whatever it may be. Like, should I do it or should I not? Or, hey, honey, so for the past 5 years, I've really not been kind of feeling so great about myself. Whenever I look in the mirror, I'm really just not the confident person I used to be. And it's having a real impact, like I feel like in our relationship as well as in my work life. And this is something that I really want to get fixed. And when it does get fixed, I feel like it's going to turn me into a much better person. And it's going to allow me to be confident again and feel good in my skin again. And it's going to allow me to really just become the best version of myself so that I can attack the relationships how they need to be attacked, and I can really just benefit overall, right? In those two instances, which one do you feel like has more success of actually hitting? It's obviously the second one, okay? So that's how you handle it if it is actually a real partner objection. But the way to see if it's a smokescreen or not is you isolate it. You say, if your partner was here, blah, 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 why would you want to do this? And then you kind of go into, okay, so like, if your partner was here for all of it, like, what do you feel like their concerns would be? Because naturally, when you ask that question, the prospect is going to tell you their concerns. So, oh, it's the money. Oh, it's this. Okay, so let's talk about the money, right? Simple. Then, handling the money objection. So when they say it's too expensive, when they say that, you know, they don't currently have the money, okay, that's completely fine. If money to the side for 1 second, like, would you do, like, is this something that you want to do? Is this something that you feel is going to help you get to XYZ desired state, desired goal? Okay, why do you feel like it is? Getting them in that results-based thinking, isolating the objection. And then we basically kind of need to tackle it, because the money could be the real problem here. Like, they might just be really uncomfortable about spending that amount of money, or they might not have the money and it can go into logistics or fear. But typically what happens here is like, okay, is the money a logistics issue or is it a fear issue? And that's what we need to kind of identify here. So we isolate, we get them into results-based thinking, and then we basically can ask. A great way to find out is, okay, so let's say, like, Mr. Prospect, is it a case of, you know, you potentially just don't have the funds right now, but you do want to get started? Or is it a case of you have the funds, you just aren't 100% sure if you should get started today? That is going to allow us to see if it's logistics or if it's fear by just giving that option, right? You can also ask, you can also be like, okay, Mr. Prospect, so like, with that said, like, what do you feel like the issue is when it comes to, like, you know, it being too expensive? Like, let them kind of explain themselves. You don't need to put them in one or the other, because it might not be either, right? So that's something that's really important. Like, you don't want to assume what they're going to say. You don't want to put them in a box. But at the same time, you need to move it, because money can only be really fear logistics. So you can, in that instance, say, if you had the money, like, is it a case that you don't have the money and you want to do this? Or is it a case that, you know, you have the money and you have a few reservations about getting started? Fear logistics, again, that's how we can see that, okay? The key thing here is, again, there's a bunch of different reframes that you can use, especially when it comes to logistics and fear, that we kind of need to talk about here. So when handling the logistical objections, so like, I need to wait till payday. Okay, so completely understand, Mr. Prospect. We've already isolated it before, so we don't necessarily need to do that again. However, if this is the first time, like, you drop the price, they say, perfect, I want to do this, but I don't have the funds, I want to wait till payday. Okay, so you isolate it again, like, okay, money aside, cash flow aside for a second, like, is this something that you want to do? Yes. Okay. Why? Why do you believe that this is something that's going to help you get to XYZ? And then you can normalize it, right? You want to normalize how they feel. It's super important to do that in logistics. You're like, okay, look, it's totally normal, man. Like, most people come to us because they need, better financial results. Like, it's completely normal that, that's the position you're in. You can then go into exploring other options, right? So how could you get started, right? We can get you on a deposit today, lock in your spot, send you over some like coaching calls, or get you in a few of the live calls, get you in the community, etc. And then we get you fully started through one-on-one coaching in 2 weeks' time when you hit that payday, right? So we can actually get you started. Or do you have a credit card that you can put this on for the time being? Do you have savings, etc.? Like, there's a bunch of different solutions, right? Deposits, different ways they can access the funds, as well as potentially offering a payment plan, right? In order to split the payments up, right? Because, not everyone can pay 10K up front. People may need payment plans, and that's okay, right? If they want to do this, it's our job to be able to help them to do this, to reach their goals. So we need to provide them with a solution that works for them. So if they can pay 5K today and then 2.5K the next month and 2.5K the next month, if we can do that as a business, if that's okay with the team, then okay, cool, let's do it. And most of the time it will be, right? So that's logistics, very simple. And fear. Now, fear is where it gets kind of, this is where the money, I guess, is really kind of made, and your stripes are really shown as a closer, because a lot of the time it does come to fear. So again, let's say we drop the price. If we've already isolated that they want to do this and we got them into results-based thinking, explaining why they want to do this, we don't need to then do that again. However, if they've just mentioned from the get-go, as soon as we drop the price, like, oh, okay, or I don't know, I've been burnt before, so like I've got some hesitation. Like I've worked with a lead generation company before and it didn't work out so well. So yeah, I've worked with a fitness coach and it didn't really work out so well. So, I've got some hesitations around there. That's fear, okay? So the key thing to understand with fear that we need to identify, based on how they say, is, okay, is it fear of the company that you work for? Like, we're not going to get you results. Is it fear that you aren't going to be able to actually get the results? So like in terms of fitness, do you not believe that you will be able to do the nutrition plan, attend the coaching calls, have the workout plan, etc.? Or were you burnt in the past? Or are you like worried of, losing money? Or are you worried of losing time, etc.? Like these are normal fears that people have, that we just need to normalize and we need to attack. And there's a few different ways we can attack that. But that's the first thing that we need to identify after we isolate and we get them into results-based thinking. A great way to do that is we basically say, again, we normalize how they're feeling, like, look, it's totally valid. Everyone feels that way when they're starting something new. I guess for me to understand, like, with where you are at right now, like, what are your main concerns? Simple question, right? What are your main concerns? That is going to allow you to understand, okay, my main concern is I'm not going to be able to do it, or my main concern is that you guys aren't going to be able to do it. But if we isolate and we get them into results-based thinking, that's usually not the case. It could be quite deep in when you find out later on, but most of the time that won't be the case. Most of the time it's a fear of themselves that they're not going to be able to do it, or it's they've been burnt in the past, or they're worried about losing money, right? And then it's just about kind of, again, identity. Getting them to really kind of understand, okay, what person do you want to be, right? Are you going to be the kind of person that when they get hit with this decision, they kind of run away, or are you going to be resourceful? Are you going to be someone that kind of tries to find the solution? Comparing the version of themselves that they are now versus the version of themselves that they want to be, right? Okay, so Mr. Prospect, do you feel like your mindset affects your decision-making process? Yeah, I would say so. Okay, and let me ask, like, are you 100% with where you're at right now? No. Why not? Well, because I'm not where I want to be with, my fitness goals. Okay, that makes sense. And so like when it comes to your your fitness goals, do you feel like it makes sense to continue making decisions like you have been that have brought you to where you are today, where you're not 100%, where you feel like you aren't comfortable in your skin, you aren't confident? Do you feel like it would make sense to continue making decisions in that way? Or do you feel like it's time to make decisions like the person you actually want to be? The person that has the confidence, the person that is where you want to be, etc. Right? Um, that is really what you are doing here. What is so important in objection handling that I want to talk about is objections are simply buying signals, right? That's all they are. People buy with emotion, right? That's all that they buy on, and it's important to remember that. You need to justify with logic, though, right? So that's why we get them into results-based thinking. That's why we tackle this, like, we bring up the emotion, but logical. It's a logical conversation because that's how they're going to kind of help them come to the decision. Like, they want to do this emotionally, but actually doing it, that's logic. And yeah, you don't need to convince them at all. You need to lead them, and you do so with questioning. You just need to question them. You need to challenge their beliefs. You need to shift their beliefs. Because at the end of the day, again, like, the mindset you need going into this, if you believe in what you sell, if you believe that you can help the other person really change their life, whether it be fitness, business, personally, whatever it is that you're selling, if you believe that you can do that, you don't need to convince them. It's simply about being the leader, being the person that can inspire them to actually make the best decision for themselves. You aren't putting a gun to their head. You aren't pressuring them. You aren't doing any of that, right? All you are doing is simply providing them with a mirror up front, in front of their face. That's it. And that's all you're there to do, right? What is going to make you an absolute G, right? An absolute superstar when it comes to objection handling and sales? Repetition. Repetition is what makes you great at this, right? It's easy for me to explain all of this, but even after explaining all of this, you're still going to have a hard time doing it. And the reason for that is because the only way you get really good at something is by practicing, right? You're not going to get amazing at playing the piano by watching someone play the piano and watching them show you how to play the piano well. Like, no. The way you get really good is by practicing every single day. So in one of these upcoming videos, I'm going to show you as well, like, the best way to practice, the best way to get feedback, and most importantly, the best way to implement that feedback so that you get really good really quickly. Because, like I said, at the end of the day, repetition, the reps, it's what gets you really good. Same way where if you go to the gym, the more reps you do, the stronger you get, right? The more reps you do in sales, the better you're going to be, all right? That's everything for today, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Any questions, drop them in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow.